A barren hilltop under silver moonlight, the sporadic crack of gunfire echoed through the Hindu Kush Mountains. Lieutenant Jack Carson of SEAL Team Alpha 7 crouched behind a weathered boulder, studying the terrain through night vision goggles. His team of 4 had been operating in these remote valleys for 18 hours. What should have been a routine extraction had become a nightmare when their support helicopter took an RPG round 3 kilometers from the landing zone. The landscape offered nothing but death on all sides. Carson's team was pinned down in a depression that provided minimal cover from the elevated position surrounding them. The bitter cold penetrated their tactical gear, numbing fingers that needed to remain steady on triggers. "Contact front!" Petty Officer Sarah Chen's voice crackled through their comms as muzzle flashes erupted from the ridgeline above. Heavy fog rolled through the valley, reducing visibility to mere meters. The anti-aircraft emplacements had already destroyed any hope of air support. Final broken arrow. Broken arrow. Alpha 7 is compromised. Repeat. Alpha 7 is compromised. The silence that answered was deafening. Carson tried again, switching frequencies. Nothing. Ryan Cooper, the team's medic, pressed his back against the rocks as bullets chipped away at their cover. "Sir, we're almost black on ammo. Chen's got maybe 20 rounds left. I've got half a mag." Marcus Sullivan, their communications specialist, looked up from his equipment. "Comms are being actively jammed. Something's blocking all frequencies except short-range team tactical." Carson nodded, swallowing hard. "Options?" he asked, knowing the answer before anyone spoke. "Die standing or die running," Chen replied, her face pressed against her rifle scope. "Movement on the eastern slope. They're flanking us." Carson counted at least 16 confirmed enemy positions. His team was outnumbered, outgunned, and dangerously low on ammunition. He closed his eyes for a moment, running through prayers he'd learned as a child. When he opened them, the darkness seemed absolute. "We're dead for sure. No one's coming." That's when the voice came. Low, steady, completely calm. A female voice cutting through radio static like a blade through silk. "Alpha 7, this is Overwatch. I have your position. Hold fast." The 4 SEALs froze, hope flickering for the first time in hours. Sullivan's eyes widened. "Sir," he whispered, "who the hell is that?" The voice continued with surgical precision. "Alpha 7, you have hostiles at bearing 045, range 40 meters. Elevated position behind the split boulder. Secondary group at bearing 315 using the dead tree for cover." "Copy Overwatch," Carson responded carefully. "What's your position?" "Northeast ridge, approximately 1850 meters from your location. I have thermal imaging and clear sight lines to your perimeter." Carson did the math. 1,800 meters was beyond the effective range of most sniper systems, especially in these weather conditions. Chen pressed her radio. "Overwatch, how do we know you're friendly?" A pause, then, "Because if I weren't, you'd already be dead." "Alpha 7, the voice continued, "I need you to move in stages. Chen, you're going to bound northeast 20 meters to the cluster of rocks shaped like a horseshoe. Carson, you'll provide covering fire on my mark." Carson hesitated. Taking tactical guidance from an unknown operator violated every protocol he'd been taught, but protocols hadn't kept them alive so far. "Overwatch, we're moving on your command. Stand by." Then the first shot rang out. A sharp crack echoed across the valley, followed immediately by shouting from the western slope. One of the flanking team's muzzle flashes went dark. "Chen, move now," the voice commanded. Chen sprinted across the open ground, diving behind the horseshoe rocks just as automatic fire erupted. Carson and Sullivan laid down suppressing fire. Next bound, Sullivan to the fallen log 15 meters south of Chen's position. Another shot rang out. A second enemy position went silent. The sequence repeated: sprint, cover, pause. Each bound brought them closer to better defensive positions, while their guardian angel eliminated threats with surgical precision. "Sir," Chen's voice carried awe, "whoever this is, she's operating at a level I've never seen." Carson had to agree. In 12 years of special operations, he'd worked with some of the finest snipers in the world. This was different. This was art. Fort Bragg, North Carolina. 3 weeks earlier, Colonel William Old Man Harrison stood at the window of his Spartan office, gazing at the training grounds. At 68, his weathered face bore the marks of decades in the field. Though officially retired from active service, He remained a consultant for operations that required institutional memory. On his desk lay a faded photograph. 5 operators in desert camouflage, standing before a Black Hawk helicopter somewhere in Iraq during Operation Desert Storm. 4 faces were clear. The 5th had been carefully excised. The knock at his door was crisp, authoritative. Brigadier General Frederick Shaw entered without waiting for a response. "Colonel Harrison," Shaw nodded, dispensing with the customary salute. At 45, Shaw represented the modern military leadership, politically savvy, technologically adept, and career-focused. "General," Harrison acknowledged. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Just keeping you informed, as a courtesy." Shaw's emphasis on the last word was subtle but unmistakable. "SEAL Team Alpha 7 is being deployed to the Hindu Kush region tomorrow. Extraction of a high-value intelligence asset." Now Harrison turned, his pale blue eyes sharpening. "Alpha 7? That's an unusual designation." "Just a random assignment," Shaw replied too quickly. "Standard extraction protocol, in and out in 12 hours. The Hindu Kush is Russian PMC territory these days," Harrison observed, keeping his tone casual. "Our intelligence suggests the area will be clear," Shaw countered, checking his watch. Harrison picked up the photograph from his desk. "I ran an operations in those mountains for 20 years, son. Nothing is ever clear in the Hindu Kush." "Well, fortunately, we have better intelligence than in your day, Colonel." Shaw smiled without warmth. "Technology doesn't change the terrain or human nature. Is there something specific concerning you about this operation, Colonel? Some insight from your extensive experience?" "Just find it curious," Harrison said slowly, "that after all these years, someone decided to resurrect the Alpha 7 designation." A flicker of something, surprise, concern, crossed Shaw's face before his political mask reasserted itself. "As I said, random assignment." After Shaw departed, Harrison secured his office and walked to his personal vehicle. Once inside, he pulled out a secure satellite phone that operated on frequencies not monitored by standard military communications. "They're using Alpha 7, he said when the call connected. No greeting, no identification. The voice that answered was equally terse. "When?" "Deployment tomorrow. Hindu Kush." A long pause. "It's starting again." "Yes," Harrison agreed. "They're sending kids into a trap, and I can't stop it through official channels." "I'll handle it," the voice promised. Harrison sat in his car, the weight of knowledge and history pressing down on him. The photograph in his office had told a story, 4 faces and 1 absence. But the absence spoke louder than any presence could. It represented a betrayal so profound that even after 20 years, the wound remained fresh. "God help those boys," he whispered. "The ghosts are waking up." Elk Valley, Montana, present day. The sunrise painted the Rocky Mountains in hues of amber and gold. Michael Reynolds stood on his deck, a steaming cup of coffee warming hands that had taken more lives than he cared to remember. At 45, his 6-foot frame remained solid, though flecks of gray now peppered his dark hair and beard. The jagged scar that ran from his left temple to Jewish served as a permanent reminder of Kosovo and the day everything changed. The satellite phone on the table chirped once. Only 3 people had this number. "Harrison," Reynolds answered, his voice carrying the gravel of too many years spent shouting orders in combat zones. "It's happening," the older man's voice replied. "Shaw just deployed a SEAL team to the Hindu Kush under Alpha 7 designation." Reynolds set his coffee down carefully. Alpha 7, a code designation from another life. A designation that had been used exactly once before, when Reynolds had been authorized to hunt down Richard Hayes after the Kosovo betrayal. "Coincidence?" Monty asked, knowing the answer. "There are no coincidences at this level," Harrison replied. "It's a message, or a trap, maybe both." "You think Hayes is alive?" It wasn't a question. "I never believed he died in that building collapse," Harrison said. "Neither did you." For 20 years, Reynolds had maintained a global network of contacts, monitoring for any sign that Richard Hayes had survived the explosion in Kosovo. "The SEAL team," Reynolds asked, "what's their actual mission?" "Extraction of an intelligence asset, that's the official story." But Shaw was lying through his teeth. "They're bait," Reynolds concluded. "Hayes wants to confirm I'm still operational, still hunting. So he engineered a scenario designed to draw me out. Using American operators as pawns, Harrison's disgust was evident. Reynolds moved to a secure room that would have impressed military intelligence agencies. Multiple screens displayed global news feeds, surveillance data, and communication intercepts. "Send me everything you have on the team and their operational parameters," Reynolds said. "I'll be wheels up in 30 minutes. "Michael," Harrison's voice carried a warning. "Shaw has connections we don't fully understand. If you go in officially—" "I haven't been official for 20 years, Bill," Reynolds cut him off. "Guardian Shield will deploy a private security team to extract a corporate asset. Standard contract work." Guardian Shield security consultants had been Reynolds' cover for 15 years, providing the perfect cover for his actual mission, hunting the ghosts of Project Spectre. After ending the call, Reynolds moved to a hidden panel in the wall, revealing a custom gun safe. Inside lay the tools of a trade officially disavowed by every government agency. His fingers traced the familiar contours of the Macmillan TAC-338 sniper rifle. His satellite phone chirped again, a different tone this time. "Kate," he answered, activating the secure line. "I just got Harrison's alert." Catherine Morgan's voice was crisp, focused. "Alpha 7 designation in the Hindu Kush. Hayes is making his move." "Preparing to deploy now," Reynolds confirmed. "Can you handle remote overwatch?" "Already accessing NSA satellite feeds through our back channels," she replied. "If this SEAL team is in the field, I'll find them." "We're dealing with Hayes," Reynolds reminded her. "He'll anticipate standard protocols." "Which is why I'm not using standard protocols," Kate replied. "If Hayes is monitoring military channels, he won't see us coming through private contractor frequencies." "Michael," Kate's voice softened slightly, "if it really is Hayes, then we finish what started in Kosovo." Reynolds completed her thought. "Once and for all." 20 years ago, Richard Hayes had betrayed Project Spectre, resulting in the deaths of Thomas Gray, David Miller, and Adam Wright, operators who had been more than teammates. For 20 years, Reynolds had carried that wound, that responsibility. "I'll see you at the rally point," Kate confirmed before ending the call. Reynolds closed his eyes, centering himself. The past and present were colliding in the mountains of Afghanistan. After 20 years of hunting shadows, he would finally face the ghost that had haunted him. "I'm coming for you, Hayes," he whispered. "This time, one of us doesn't walk away." Poem. Fort Benning, Georgia, 1992. The early morning fog hung low over the firing range. 23-year-old Catherine Kate Morgan pressed her cheek against the cold stock of her M24 rifle. 5 heartbeats. Inhale halfway. Hold. 800 meters. Moderate crosswind from the west. The target appeared briefly through a gap in the fog. She squeezed the trigger. "Hit!" The range officer's voice betrayed no emotion, but the widening of his eyes told her everything. "Center mass, adjusted windage perfect." Kate was the only woman on this range, one of only 3 females selected for the experimental sniper training program. Every day was a test, not just of her skills, but of her right to be there at all. "Morgan," the deep voice came from behind. She recognized it immediately. Colonel William Harrison, the program's commander, and a Vietnam veteran with one of the most impressive sniper records in military history. "Sir," she rose to attention. Harrison gestured toward the 1,000-meter targets barely visible through the fog. "Those conditions are almost impossible. Think you can make that shot?" "Yes, sir," Kate answered without hesitation. "Prove it." She returned to her firing position. The M24 sniper weapon system was new to military inventory. The .308 Winchester cartridge was capable at this range, but would require perfect execution. Kate slowed her breathing, entering what the instructors called sniper's mind. She made her calculations and fired. "Hit!" The range officer's voice carried genuine surprise. "Headshot!" "Morgan," Harrison said quietly after she'd finished her sequence. "Report to my office at 1800 hours. There's something we need to discuss." Precisely at 1800 hours, Kate stood outside Colonel Harrison's office. The office was Spartan. No personal photos, minimal decorations, just military awards and unit citations arranged with geometric precision. "You understand this sniper program is experimental," Harrison began. "Women aren't authorized for direct combat roles. Won't be for years, maybe decades." "Yes, sir." Her voice betrayed nothing. "Your scores are the highest we've seen since the program began. not just among women, among anyone. Thank you, sir. That wasn't a compliment, Morgan, it was a fact. Harrison leaned forward. I've served this country for 40 years. One thing I've learned is that talent is too rare to waste because of politics or prejudice. He reached into his desk and withdrew a file with classified markings. Have you ever heard of Project Spectre, Morgan? No, sir. Good, because officially it doesn't exist. Harrison opened the file but angled it away from her. After Desert Storm, certain elements within Special Operations Command recognized a need for operators who could function completely outside the normal chain of command, deniable assets who could deploy anywhere, eliminate high-value targets, and disappear before anyone knew they were there. These operators would have no official status, no uniforms, no formal recognition. They would be ghosts. Harrison's eyes met hers directly. Their very existence would be classified at the highest levels. Why are you telling me this, sir? Because we're selecting 5 operators for the program, and your name is on the short list. Kate processed this carefully. What would this entail, sir? 6 months of specialized training beyond anything you've experienced. Access to experimental weapon systems. Deployment to areas where American forces officially have no presence. Harrison's voice dropped lower. And the understanding that if you're captured or killed, the United States government will disavow all knowledge of your existence. Why me, sir? Because you have something the others don't, Morgan. When most shooters make a difficult shot, they're thinking about their technique, their adjustments. When you shoot, he paused, when you shoot, it's like watching someone breathe, natural, instinctive, as if the rifle and bullet are simply extensions of your will. I'm not offering this because you're a woman. I'm offering it despite that fact. This country needs the best, regardless of gender. Right now, that's you. Kate considered her options. The conventional path would mean fighting institutional barriers for years. This alternative offered immediate deployment, but at the cost of official recognition. When do I start, sir? Harrison extended his hand, a gesture of respect rarely offered to junior officers. Tomorrow, 500. Bring nothing but yourself. Welcome to the shadows, Lieutenant Morgan. The training facility didn't appear on any official map. Located in a remote corner of the Appalachian Mountains, the compound consisted of low, nondescript buildings surrounded by wilderness. 5 operators had been selected for Project Spectre's inaugural class: Michael Reynolds, Catherine Morgan, Thomas Gray, Richard Hayes, and David Miller. Reynolds, a former Army Ranger with natural leadership abilities, was designated as team leader. Gray was a former Force Recon Marine with exceptional fieldcraft. Hayes brought years of experience from Delta Force. Miller was an Army intelligence specialist with linguistic capabilities in 12 languages. And Morgan, the only woman and the youngest, brought shooting skills that defied conventional metrics. Forget everything you think you know about being an operator, Harrison announced. From this moment forward, you don't exist. Your previous service records have been sealed. Your assignments will never appear in any official document. You are becoming ghosts. The training was unlike anything Kate had experienced. 16-hour days filled with marksmanship drills under impossible conditions. They practiced calculating shots that defied conventional ballistics, using ammunition and weapon systems that weren't supposed to exist. Hayes, however, made no attempt to hide his resentment toward Kate's inclusion in the unit. They're lowering standards, he muttered, loud enough for others to hear. Political correctness will get people killed downrange. The tension came to a head during a stress shooting competition. When Kate's turn came, Hayes deliberately positioned himself within her peripheral vision. Just remember Morgan, he said as she prepared to fire. When you miss, it won't just be your reputation. You'll be proving women don't belong here. She didn't acknowledge him. Instead, she centered herself and squeezed the trigger. Perfect hit. Center mass at 1,200 meters under extreme duress. Later that night, she found a note slipped under her barracks door. Some people earn their place, others get it handed to them. Remember the difference. It wasn't signed, but she recognized Hayes' handwriting. It was during this period that Kate first met Daniel Morrison, the civilian technician responsible for maintaining their advanced optical systems. Your scope's elevation adjustment is off by 4.3 MOA, he told her after observing one of her training sessions. Not enough to miss, but enough to make you work harder than necessary. The armorer checked it yesterday. The armorer isn't the one who designed it. Morrison grinned, Ned, pushing wire-rimmed glasses up his nose. Mind if I take a look? The next day, her scores improved by 15%. After that, Kate made a point of seeking out Morrison whenever equipment issues arose. He became the one person in the program she could speak to without calculating every word. By the time their training concluded 6 months later, the original 5 had been forged into something new. Operators who could disappear into any environment, eliminate targets at ranges considered impossible, and extract without leaving evidence of their presence. They received their first deployment orders on a rainy Tuesday. The target, a Serbian arms dealer supplying weapons to Iraq. The location, officially nowhere. The team would not exist. The mission would not exist. Success would never be acknowledged. Failure would be denied. Hindu Kush Mountains, Afghanistan, present day. The night had grown colder as Lieutenant Carson's team continued their movement under the protection of their mysterious guardian angel. Each bound brought them closer to more defensible terrain. Final movement, came the voice. All units bound to the stone wall, 200 meters northeast. I'll provide continuous overwatch. Copy that. Overwatch, Carson paused. And thank you. Save the gratitude until you're home safe. The coordinated movement was flawless. Carson's team bounded by pairs while their invisible protector eliminated threats with mechanical efficiency. By the time they reached the stone wall, the enemy fire had ceased entirely. Alpha 7, this is Overwatch, the voice said. You have clear egress routes to the north and east. Hostile forces are withdrawing to regroup. Your extraction window is approximately 45 minutes. Carson looked at his team. They were battered, exhausted, but alive. Overwatch, we owe you our lives. You owe me nothing. Just get home to your families. Will we see you at extraction? The radio was silent for a long moment. Ghosts don't usually attend parties, Alpha 7. And just like that, Carson knew they were alone again. But this time, they were alone with hope instead of despair. From her concealed position on the northeast ridge, Kate adjusted her scope and studied the tactical situation through thermal imaging. The SEAL team had reached relative safety, but heat signatures were regrouping in the distance. These weren't typical insurgents. This was a coordinated military operation with advanced equipment and tactics. The M2010 enhanced sniper rifle felt like an extension of her own body. Custom-built, hand-fitted, with modifications that existed in no official manual. Kate keyed her radio one final time. Alpha 7, you have approximately 30 hostiles converging on your position from 3 directions. This is going to get intense. Carson's voice came back, tight with tension. Copy Overwatch. Can you provide continued support? That's the plan. What she didn't tell them was that this would require shooting at the absolute limits of human capability. She controlled her breathing, feeling her heart rate slow to tactical rhythm. Wind speed 8 miles per hour, gusting to 12. Temperature 34 degrees Fahrenheit. The mathematics were complex, but her body performed them instinctively. The M2010 spoke once. Through her scope, she watched the enemy sniper's heat signature collapse behind his cover. One shot, one kill, at a range most marksmen would consider fantasy. Target 2, machine gun team establishing a support position. She tracked the heat signature, waiting for the perfect moment when the gunner emerged to adjust his tripod. The second shot eliminated the machine gun threat before it could fire a single round. Now the enemy knew they were dealing with a precision marksman of extraordinary capability. Panic began to spread through their ranks. Target 3, enemy commander. This shot required threading between 2 boulders with less than 18 inches of clearance. The M2010's third bullet found its mark with mechanical precision. By the time she had eliminated 8 enemy combatants, the remaining forces were in full retreat. They fled into the darkness, unwilling to face an enemy they couldn't see. Through her thermal scope, Kate watched Alpha 7's heat signatures relax slightly. They'd survived. They'd complete their mission and return home to families who would never know how close death had come. Alpha 7, she transmitted one final time. You have clear egress to extraction. Stay safe. Overwatch, Carson's voice carried profound gratitude. We don't know who you are, but... She switched off the radio before he could finish. Some conversations were better left incomplete. As she packed her equipment, a movement in her thermal scope caught her attention. She froze, rifle instantly back in position. Scanning the area where enemy forces had retreated, she picked up a heat signature, moving differently than the others. More deliberate, more disciplined. When the figure stepped briefly into a clearing, Kate felt the blood freeze in her veins. The stance, the tactical movement, the deliberate way he swept the terrain. There was only one person it could be. Richard Hayes, the PA who had betrayed Project Spectre, the man who had killed her teammates in Kosovo, the man who was supposed to be dead. As if sensing her recognition, the figure melted back into the shadows, but not before Kate caught a glimpse of something in his hand. Not a weapon, but a communications device unlike standard military issue. This wasn't a random encounter. This wasn't a typical insurgent attack. This was a hunt. And she had just realized, too late, that she wasn't the hunter. She was the prey. Iraq, Operation Desert Storm, January 1991. The sandstorm swept across the Iraqi desert. 5 figures advanced through the maelstrom, their outlines blurred by specialized gear that carried no identifying markings. The newly formed Project Spectre team moved with the confidence of elite operators, yet with none of the protection afforded to official military personnel. Michael Reynolds adjusted his shamong as he consulted the GPS unit strapped to his wrist. They were 8 kilometers behind enemy lines, in territory supposedly secured by the Republican Guard's elite 10th Armored Division. Their mission? Eliminate General Mahmoud al-Rashidi, the commander responsible for deploying chemical weapons against Kurdish civilians. 2 clicks to the observation point, he informed the team through their encrypted comm system. Thomas Gray raised a closed fist, the signal to halt. The team instantly dropped to prone positions, weapons ready. Movement ahead. Gray's Tennessee drawl remained calm. Vehicle patrol, 3 technicals. Heavy weapons mounted. Pattern? Hayes asked from his position on the right flank. Standard sweep. They'll pass 50 meters to our north in approximately 2 minutes. Colonel Harrison's voice came through their earpieces from his position at the forward operating base. Spectre team, be advised. Al-Rashidi has moved his command post to the secondary location. You'll need to adjust your approach. This was their first operational deployment, the test of everything they had learned during 6 brutal months of training. If captured, they would be disavowed. If killed, their bodies would never be recovered. By nightfall, they had reached the observation point, a low ridge overlooking a cluster of buildings. The sandstorm had abated, leaving behind a crystalline desert night. Reynolds set up his shooting position with methodical precision, assembling his custom M24 rifle and calibrating the scope. Distance to target, approximately 1,250 meters, at the outer limits of the weapon's effective range, especially with the variable desert winds. Morgan, what's your assessment? Hayes asked, establishing his own position. The question carried a hint of challenge. Doable but complicated, Kate replied without looking up from her calculations. Wind shifting between 10 and 15 knots. Temperature dropping rapidly after sunset. Significant mirage effect. I'll take the shot, Hayes offered. My ballistic calculations show better odds from my position. Colonel Harrison's voice cut through the tension. Reynolds has primary, Morgan is secondary. Hayes, you're overwatch for the perimeter. This isn't a competition, people. The next 3 hours were spent in silent observation, documenting guard rotations, identifying key personnel, confirming the target's presence. At 0200 hours, their mission parameters suddenly changed. Spectre team, be advised. Harrison's voice carried unusual urgency. We have a Delta Force team compromised 3 clicks east of your position. They're taking heavy fire from Republican Guard units. Al-Rashidi has ordered their capture for public execution. The team exchanged glances. Their mission was clear. Eliminate Al-Rashidi. The Delta team wasn't their responsibility. Sir, request permission to assist, Gray said before anyone else could speak. Harrison's response was measured. Negative, Spectre team, maintain your primary objective. Delta knew the risks. Reynolds adjusted his scope, focusing on the command building. He weighed his options, the lives of the Delta operators against their explicit orders. Sir, he said quietly, I believe we can complete our mission objective and create an opportunity for the Delta team's extraction. Explain, Reynolds. If Al-Rashidi is eliminated precisely when he's issuing orders regarding the Delta team, It will create maximum confusion in the command structure. The resulting disarray should provide Delta with an extraction window. Hayes's voice carried skepticism. That's a 1,250-meter shot in variable desert conditions at night. Nobody makes that shot consistently. Morgan can make it, Reynolds replied, his confidence born of certainty from observing Kate's performance. Harrison was silent for a long moment. You understand the consequences if you miss, not just for the mission, but for Delta. She won't miss. You have green light. Execute when ready. Kate settled deeper into her shooting position, body becoming one with the earth beneath her. Through her scope, she could see Rashidi clearly now, gesturing emphatically to subordinates as he issued orders. The wind gusted, then settled into a predictable pattern. She made her calculations, adjusting for every variable that would influence the bullet's path. Send it when ready, Reynolds whispered. Kate exhaled halfway, held, and squeezed the trigger. Through her scope, she watched as the 7.62 millimeter round found its mark 1.3 seconds later. Al-Rashidi's head snapped back, his body collapsing among his stunned officers. Target down, she reported calmly, already adjusting her aim to the guard position by the main entrance. Confirmed kill. What followed was a textbook application of their training. With the primary target eliminated, Spectre teams systematically neutralized key security positions, creating a window of maximum confusion. Within minutes, Republican Guard units were being redirected from the Delta team's position back to the command post. Delta team is mobile, Harrison reported an hour later as Spectre team exfiltrated through the darkness. They've broken contact and are en route to extraction. 5 wounded, but all alive. The team moved in silence, each processing what they had accomplished. Their first mission was a success by any metric, yet no record would ever show their actions. No medals would be awarded. As dawn approached and they reached their extraction point, Gray finally spoke what they all were thinking. That shot shouldn't have been possible. Kate secured her rifle case, face betraying nothing. It was just math. Hayes studied her with an unreadable expression. No, it wasn't just math. I calculated the same shot. Even with perfect conditions, the probability of success was under 30%. For the first time since they had begun training, there was a hint of respect in his voice, perhaps even a touch of fear. Bagram Air Base, Afghanistan, present day. The C-17 Globemaster III touched down in darkness. Unlike the regular military transport flights, this aircraft bore the insignia of a private contractor, Guardian Shield Security Consultants. Michael Reynolds stepped onto the tarmac, scanning the surroundings with automatic vigilance. Colonel William Harrison waited beside a nondescript SUV. You made good time, Harrison remarked as they exchanged a brief handshake. Kate made contact with the SEAL team, Reynolds replied without preamble. Alpha 7 is secure for now, but she spotted Hayes monitoring their extraction point. Harrison's weathered face tightened. So it's confirmed. He's alive. And using our old playbook. Reynolds stared out at the mountains. The question is why now? After 20 years of hiding, why surface and risk exposure? The SUV moved through the base perimeter, bypassing standard checkpoints with credentials that opened doors without questions. I've been digging through classified channels since I contacted you, Harrison said. Shaw has been systematically placing former SOG operators in key positions throughout CENTCOM over the past 5 years. The Alpha 7 designation wasn't random. It was a message. A taunt, Reynolds corrected. Hayes knows exactly what that code means to us. Inside a nondescript building, a temporary command center had been established. Harrison gestured toward a digital tactical display showing topographical maps. Alpha 7's official mission was to extract an intelligence asset from this village. But there was no asset. The entire operation was manufactured to place them exactly where they were ambushed. Reynolds studied the terrain. Perfect kill box, limited extraction options. Minimal communication with base. The trap wasn't just for Alpha 7, Harrison continued, pulling up satellite imagery. It was for Kate. Hayes knew she monitors emergency channels. He's not just after her, Reynolds said quietly. He's after all of us. The Kosovo evidence. A communications specialist approached with a secure tablet. Sir, we have an incoming transmission from Agent Morgan. Reynolds accepted the device, entering a complex authentication code. Kate's face appeared on the screen, the darkness behind her suggesting she was still in the field. "Michael, I've got complications," she began without greeting. "I took damage X-filing from the Overwatch position. Hayes had a spotter team I didn't identify until too late." Reynolds noted the improvised bandage visible on her shoulder. "How bad?" "Through and through, left shoulder. But that's not the main issue. One of the SEAL team members found me, their sniper, Petty Officer Chen. She followed my blood trail to a cave where I was treating the wound." Harrison moved into frame. "Does she know who you are?" "She knows enough to be dangerous. She identified my ammunition as experimental DARPA issue." Kate shifted, a momentary grimace of pain crossing her features. "But there's more. Hayes is using SOG contractors, but they're working with official Russian PMCs in the region. This isn't a rogue operation, it's state-sponsored." The implication hung in the air. If Hayes had Russian backing, this was no longer just about old vendettas and buried secrets. It was about current geopolitics and active intelligence operations. "Can you move?" Reynolds asked, already formulating extraction scenarios. "Yes, but slowly. Chen is helping. I'm sending you our coordinates now. We need extraction within 12 hours. "Understood. Maintain communication blackout except for emergency beacon." Reynolds ended the transmission and turned to Harrison. "I need to brief the rest of my team, and we need to make contact with Lieutenant Carson without alerting Shaw's people. Michael, if Hayes has Russian backing, this is bigger than Project Spectre. This could be an active intelligence penetration at the highest levels." "One problem at a time, Bill," Reynolds replied. "First, we get Kate and Chen out. Then we deal with Hayes. After that, we can worry about who's pulling his strings." The years that followed, Desert Storm transformed Project Spectre from an experimental program into a lethal reality. Though their existence remained officially denied, their reputation spread through the special operations community like whispered folklore. By 2001, with tensions escalating in the Balkans, Spectre was deployed to the Kosovo border region. Their target? Dragoslav Milovanic, a Serbian arms dealer supplying advanced weapons to extremist groups. Intelligence had tracked Milovanic to a remote compound in the mountains, far from the UN peacekeeping forces. The mission was designated Operation Silent Thunder. Eliminate Milovanic and destroy his weapons cache without leaving evidence of American involvement. "Primary target maintains consistent routine," Kate reported during their mission briefing. "He inspects the weapons shipments at 900 daily, then meets with his security team at 1100. Security consists of approximately 20 personnel with military training," Gray added. "Former Serbian special forces, well-equipped, disciplined." "Two-phase approach," Kate suggested. "Eliminate Milovanic during his 1100 meeting when all key lieutenants are present. Create maximum command disruption, then neutralize the security detail at key points." Hayes studied the tactical overlay. "Approach vector brings us dangerously close to the village on the eastern slope." "The village is abandoned, according to intelligence," Gray noted. "Has been since the fighting in 99. The team continued refining their assault plan. By nightfall, everything was in place for the operation to commence the following morning. Kate took first watch, settling behind her observation scope as darkness enveloped the mountains. After 10 years, she had learned to find a certain peace in these moments of solitary vigilance. "Mind if I join you?" Gray's soft drawl came from behind. "Can't sleep?" she asked, not taking her eye from the scope. "Beautiful country," he said, settling beside her. "Hard to believe so much blood has been spilled over it. People have been killing each other over this land since before America existed. We're just the latest in a very long line. 10 years we've been doing this, Kate. No recognition, no record, just ghosts passing through history." "Having regrets?" "No," Grady answered without hesitation. "But sometimes I wonder what comes after. We can't do this forever." "I don't think there is an after for people like us, Tom," she said softly. "We made our choice when we joined Spectre." Gray nodded, understanding the truth in her words. "Hayes has been acting strange this deployment. More secretive, making calls when he thinks no one's listening." "Hayes has always been strange," Kate replied, but a flicker of concern crossed her face. "Just watch your back tomorrow. Something doesn't feel right." Before she could press him further, movement at the compound caught her attention. Activity at the east entrance, unscheduled vehicle arrival. They watched as armed men escorted a group of civilians from the vehicle into the compound. Women and children moving with the stunned compliance of those who had endured recent trauma. Those aren't combatants, Kate said, tension in her voice. Civilians. Gray's expression darkened. Intelligence said nothing about hostages. That village wasn't abandoned. By dawn, the situation had become clearer and more complicated. Milovanic's men had conducted a raid overnight, taking approximately 20 civilians hostage. We need to abort, Kate argued during the pre-mission briefing. Parameters have changed. We can't guarantee civilian safety. Our orders are clear, Hayes countered. Eliminate Milovanich and destroy the weapons. The civilians weren't part of the briefing because they're not our concern. Not our concern? Gray's voice carried rare anger. Those are children in there. Collateral damage happens in war, Hayes replied coldly. We can't compromise a strategic objective for a few local civilians. They're not collateral damage, Reynolds shot back. They're innocent people. We need to modify the approach. There isn't time, Hayes insisted. Intelligence shows the weapons are being moved tomorrow. We're not executioners, Gray said quietly. We've never accepted civilian casualties as part of our operations. I won't start now. I'm calling it in, Reynolds decided, reaching for the encrypted satellite phone. Command needs to know the situation has changed. Hayes moved with startling speed, his hand closing around Reynolds' wrist. No, we proceed as planned. Take your hand off me, Reynolds said, his voice deadly quiet. For a moment, it seemed Hayes might escalate the confrontation. Then, with deliberate slowness, he released Reynolds' wrist and stepped back. Make the call. But remember, we all agreed to put the mission first when we joined Spectre. Reynolds contacted General Harrison, who agreed the mission would proceed, but with modified parameters to ensure civilian safety. The team spent the next 6 hours developing a new approach that would minimize danger to the hostages. As dusk approached and they prepared for the night operation, Gray took Reynolds aside. I don't trust him, he said quietly, nodding towards Hayes. He's too invested in the original plan. We've worked with him for 10 years, Reynolds replied, though uncertainty tinged his voice. There's a first time for everything, Gray said. Just be ready for anything. The operation began at 2300 hours under a clouded sky. Kate moved to her designated firing position, a perch that offered the necessary angle while keeping her fire away from the civilian holding area. Spectre 1 in position, she reported. I have visual on the target building. No sign of Milovanich yet. Spectre 3 and 4 beginning infiltration, Reynolds reported, as he and Gray approached the compound's perimeter. Spectre 5 moving to weapons cache, Miller confirmed. At 23:15, Milovanich appeared in her scope. She tracked his movement, waiting for the perfect moment when he would be isolated from any civilians. I have visual on primary target, she reported, awaiting optimal shot placement. Milovanich moved to a window, pausing to light a cigarette. The perfect shot presented itself. Taking the shot, Kate announced. Then everything went wrong. An explosion rocked the northern section of the compound, nowhere near the planned demolition area. Alarms immediately blared across the facility. What the hell was that? Gray's voice carried confusion. Miller, was that you? Negative, Miller responded. I'm still moving to position. Someone else triggered that explosion. All units hold position, Reynolds commanded. Something's wrong. This isn't part of the plan. His words were cut short by the unmistakable crack of a high-powered rifle, Hayes's weapon. Through her scope, Kate watched as one of Milovanich's lieutenants collapsed. Spectre 2, what are you doing? Reynolds demanded. You were not cleared to engage. Hayes's voice was chillingly calm. Primary target moving to vehicle bay, likely attempting evacuation. All units, maintain position until we assess, Reynolds began. But more shots from Hayes's position interrupted his order. The compound erupted into chaos. Spectre 3 and 4 compromised, Gray reported, the sound of gunfire audible. Taking heavy fire near the civilian holding area. Spectre 2, we need covering fire on the south approach, Reynolds called. Silence from Hayes's position. Tom, Richard's not responding, Reynolds said. Something's wrong. We're pinned down, Gray replied. Can't move without covering fire. Reynolds acquired Milovanich through his scope as he rushed toward an armored SUV. He took the shot, dropping him with a clean hit to center mass. But instead of creating the expected confusion, the security forces responded with alarming coordination. directing concentrated fire toward Gray and Miller's position. Taking heavy fire, Miller reported. I'm hit, left shoulder. Falling back to secondary position, Gray said. Miller's wounded but mobile. Spectre 3, Miller's voice carried unusual urgency. I've spotted Spectre 2 moving north, away from the compound. He's not engaging hostiles. The implications were staggering. Hayes had abandoned his position, leaving his teammates exposed. Kate moved quickly to support Reynolds and Gray. Through her earpiece, she could hear the situation deteriorating rapidly. What happened next would be seared into Kate's memory forever. As she moved toward her teammate's position, a new sound cut through the chaos, the distinctive thump of a grenade launcher. RPG! Gray's warning came a split second before an explosion ripped through the trees. Tom! Michael! Kate abandoned protocol, sprinting toward the explosion site. Status report. Only static answered. She reached the site to find devastation. Reynolds' body thrown against the boulder, blood streaming from a massive head wound. Gray was nowhere to be seen. A weak voice called from behind a fallen tree. Kate! She found Gray half buried under debris, his lower body crushed. His eyes, always so steady, now glazed with the approaching shadow of death. Tom, hold on. She knelt beside him. We'll get you out. No time. His voice was fading. It was Hayes. I saw him with the RPG. The world seemed to stop. What are you saying? He's working for someone else. Not an accident. Planned it. Whoosh, with tremendous effort, Gray reached inside his tactical vest, withdrawing a small metallic object. A thumb drive. Found this in his gear yesterday. Didn't know what it meant until now. She took the drive, securing it in her own vest. Too late for me. Gray's eyes found hers. The civilians. They're just a diversion. Real target is us. Us? Spectre. Get out now. His hand gripped her arm with surprising strength. Promise me. You'll expose him. I promise, she whispered, holding his hand as his grip weakened. Been an honor, Spectre 1. A ghost of a smile touched his lips before his eyes fixed on something she couldn't see. Thomas Gray, the moral compass of Spectre, was gone. Kate allowed herself exactly 3 seconds of grief before tactical awareness reasserted itself. Miller was right. Enemy forces were converging on her position. Spectre 5, both 3 and 4 are down, she reported, her voice mechanical. Reynolds severely wounded. Gray is KIA. Hayes is compromised. I repeat, Spectre 2 is compromised. He's working against us. What? Miller's shock was evident. Are you certain? Confirmed by Gray before he died. Hayes used an RPG on their position. Kate took one last look at Gray's body, making a silent promise to return for him, then moved quickly toward Reynolds' position. He was unconscious but breathing, the head wound bleeding profusely but not immediately fatal. With Miller's help, they stabilized him enough for transport. The emergency extraction was a blur. By the time they reached the secure medical facility in Germany, General Harrison met Kate in the waiting area. Tell me, he said simply. Kate relayed the events with clinical precision, including Gray's final words in the thumb drive now secured in Harrison's safe. 20 years, Harrison finally said. Hayes has been with us for 20 years. Dozens of operations. It was all a lie, Kate replied, her voice hollow. And we never saw it. What happens now? Now we hunt him, Kate answered without hesitation. We find Hayes and we bring him to justice. For Gray. For all of us. The surgeon emerged from the operating room. He's alive, but the brain injury is severe. We've induced a coma to reduce swelling. There's significant damage to the left temporal and frontal lobes. Will he recover? Harrison asked. Too early to tell. Even if he regains consciousness, there will likely be permanent deficits, memory loss, personality changes, cognitive impairment. He'll never be field operational again. The investigation into the incident will be classified at the highest levels, Harrison informed her once they were alone again. Officially, Hayes is missing, presumed dead in the same accident that killed Gray. He's not dead, Kate stated with absolute certainty. I know. Harrison's voice carried the weight of his responsibility. But there's a complication. What kind of complication? Political. Harrison hesitated. Hayes had connections in Washington. Powerful people who would prefer this situation remain buried. His eyes met hers directly. The Spectre program is being officially terminated. All records expunged. All personnel reassigned or discharged. The implication struck Kate like a physical blow. You're shutting us down after what Hayes did? Not my decision. Harrison's frustration was evident. Orders from the highest levels. So Hayes gets away with it? With killing Gray? With nearly killing Reynolds? I didn't say that. I said Spectre is being officially terminated. What happens unofficially is another matter. He slid a file across the table. Not digital, but old-fashioned paper that could leave no electronic trace. Your injuries from the operation require extensive recovery time. You'll be placed on medical leave, then honorably discharged. Your service record will show conventional deployments only. Nothing about Spectre. Harrison tapped the file. Inside is everything we have on Hayes. Safe house locations, contact protocols, financial resources that don't officially exist. Understanding dawned. You want me to hunt him down outside the system? I want justice for our people, Harrison corrected. How that happens is not my concern, nor will it ever appear in any report I file. The choice was stark. Accept the official narrative and walk away, or continue the fight without the support of the country she had served. I'll need resources, she said finally. Already arranged. Harrison spread his hands. Lieutenant Morgan will officially leave military service with a distinguished but unremarkable record. And unofficially, Spectre 1 will disappear. Kate completed his thought. What emerges afterward is entirely up to me. There is one more thing. Harrison's voice softened slightly. Reynolds, the doctors don't know if he'll ever fully recover. But if he does, he deserves to know the truth, Kate said firmly. All of it. And he deserves the chance to finish what we started. 20 years later, in the mountains of Afghanistan, she would finally confront the ghost who had haunted her for 2 decades. Hayes had surfaced, and this time one of them wouldn't walk away. Hindu Kush Mountains, Afghanistan, present day. Kate pressed her back against the cold stone of the cave wall, checking her remaining ammunition by the dim glow of a tactical light. 4 magazines for the M2010, 2 for the sidearm, she tallied aloud. Not ideal for extended operations. Chen sat across from her, her own weapon within easy reach. The young SEAL sniper had displayed remarkable composure upon discovering that the mysterious Overwatch who had saved her team was a wounded woman operating alone in enemy territory. Lieutenant Morgan, Chen began, if this Hayes person deliberately set up my team as bait, then your entire command structure is compromised, Kate finished. The man who deployed your team, General Shaw, has connections to Hayes and SOG. He knew exactly what he was sending you into. Chen's expression hardened. My team almost died out there. That was the plan, Kate replied bluntly. The only reason Hayes didn't finish the job is because he wanted to confirm my presence first. Why you? What's so important about one retired operative? I have evidence, Kate said. Documentation of operations conducted by Hayes and his organization over the past 2 decades. Names, dates, locations of assassinations, weapons deals, intelligence sold to foreign powers. Enough to destroy not just Hayes, but the entire network he's built. And he knows you have this evidence? He knows I have access to it. What he doesn't know is that it's been secured in multiple locations with dead man switches. If anything happens to me, it goes public. Chen absorbed this. So my team was just collateral damage in his attempt to draw you out. Yes, and now you're compromised too. Once Shaw discovers you're missing, you'll be labeled AWOL at best, a traitor at worst. I should warn my team. Chen reached for her radio. Not on standard channels. Kate stopped her. Hayes will be monitoring everything. Our only chance is to rendezvous with my partner's extraction team. Kate's specialized communication device vibrated with an incoming transmission. 3 short, 2 long. Immediate threat detected. We need to move, Kate announced, already gathering her equipment. Now. What is it? Perimeter alert. Someone's approaching the cave. 6 combatants moving in tactical formation. How did they find us? Blood trail, thermal scanners, local informants. Could be any number of ways. Kate completed her equipment check. There's a secondary position 2 kilometers northeast. Higher elevation, better defensive characteristics, multiple escape routes. Chen nodded, understanding immediately. You take point with the thermal. I'll cover our tracks. They moved silently into the Afghan night. As they navigated the treacherous terrain, Kate found herself assessing the younger woman with growing respect. Chen possessed not just technical skill, but intuitive understanding that separated good operators from great ones. Your team leader, Kate said quietly. Lieutenant Carson. Tell me about him. Best officer I've served under, Chen answered without hesitation. Puts mission objectives second to his team's safety. You trust him? With my life. Why him? Because we're going to need him. Hayes won't stop with just us. Once he realizes you've linked up with me, your entire team becomes a liability he'll need to eliminate. Carson won't believe any of this without evidence, Chen pointed out. It sounds like conspiracy theory fiction. That's why we're not going to tell him everything yet. Kate resumed movement. First, we warn him that the follow-up mission Shaw is planning is a trap. Once he sees the pattern, he'll be more receptive to the larger truth. There, she finally said, indicating a natural overhang protected by large boulders. Defensible position with clear fields of fire and a hidden exit route through that ravine. As they established their new position, Chen asked the question that had clearly been bothering her. The man you mentioned, Reynolds, what happened to him after Kosovo? Hayes tried to kill him, left him with a traumatic brain injury that took years to recover from. The doctor said he'd never be operational again. But he proved them wrong. A genuine smile, rare and brief, crossed Kate's face. Michael Reynolds has been proving people wrong his entire life. It took 3 years of rehabilitation, but he recovered enough to function at a high level. He doesn't remember everything from before Kosovo. There are gaps in his memory, and he has a scar that runs from Temple to Ba where they had to piece his skull back together. And now he runs Guardian Shield with you. Yes, we built it specifically to track Hayes and protect the operators named in the files Gray gave me. For 20 years, we've been one step behind Hayes, disrupting his operations where we could, warning potential targets, gathering evidence. That's a long time to hunt one man. Her communication device vibrated again, this time with a different pattern. 4 short, 1 long, friendly approach. Kate activated the thermal scope, scanning the designated approach route. 2 operators moving up the eastern slope, she confirmed. Guardian Shield extraction team. Chen tensed slightly. How do we know they're not compromised? Authentication protocols, and the fact that they're approaching along a route only Reynolds would know to use. Kate keyed her device twice, sending a confirmation signal. Minutes later, 2 figures in advanced tactical gear materialized from the darkness. The lead figure approached their positions slowly, hands visible. Sunset in Montana, came the challenge phrase. Bring shadows from the east, Kate replied, completing the authentication. The operator removed his tactical helmet, revealing a weathered face with eyes that had seen too much combat. Agent Morgan, Reynolds sent us ahead to secure your position. The main team is 20 minutes behind us. She's with us, Kate confirmed, gesturing to Chen. Her team was used as bait. She needs to be extracted with full protection protocols. Understood. We have transportation standing by 2 clicks south. Once the main team arrives to secure this position, we'll move you both to the rally point. Kate allowed herself a moment of cautious optimism. For the first time in 2 decades, they weren't just reacting to Hayes' moves. They were positioned to confront him directly. In the distance, the faint thump of helicopter rotors announced the arrival of the main extraction team. Hayes had finally made a mistake by surfacing publicly, and Kate intended to ensure it was his last. Bagram Air Base, Afghanistan. Secure Operations Center. The Operations Center hummed with controlled urgency. Multiple display screens showed satellite imagery, thermal signatures, and topographical maps of the Hindu Kush region. At the center of this controlled chaos stood Michael Reynolds, studying the terrain map with the intensity of a predator tracking its quarry. 20 years had changed him. The jagged scar that ran from temple to jaw served as a permanent reminder of Kosovo. But it was more than physical marks that differentiated the man from the young captain who had led Project Spectre. His eyes carried the weight of 2 decades spent hunting shadows, of countless operations conducted beyond the boundaries of official sanction or recognition. Extraction team has made contact with Kate and Chen, reported a communications specialist. Evac helicopter is en route to the secondary landing zone. Reynolds nodded without shifting his gaze from the terrain map. Time to extraction point? Approximately 40 minutes, sir. And the SEAL team? Reynolds asked, finally looking up. Colonel Harrison approached from the adjacent communication station, his face grim. Lieutenant Carson received our warning through back channels. They've gone dark. No communication with base command. Smart man, Reynolds observed, taking his team off the radar before Shaw can assign them another suicide mission. Which makes them fugitives, effectively, Harrison noted. Going dark without authorization is a career ender at minimum. Reynolds traced a finger along a mountain ridge on the digital map. Career concerns become irrelevant when the alternative is a body bag. He turned to the operations center staff. I want all Guardian Shield assets redirected to locating Alpha 7. They're now primary protection targets, along with Kate and Chen. Harrison moved closer, lowering his voice. Michael, we need to discuss Shaw. Intelligence confirms he's scheduled an emergency briefing with CENTCOM in 3 hours. Whatever he's planning, it's accelerating. He knows we're here, Reynolds replied. Hayes would have reported our presence the moment he spotted Kate. Now they're moving to contain the situation before we can extract our people. It's worse than that. Harrison handed Reynolds a secure tablet displaying classified communication intercepts. Russian PMC activity has tripled in the last 6 hours. They're establishing a cordon around the entire operational area. Reynolds studied the data, his expression hardening. This isn't just about silencing witnesses anymore. This is an active military operation with a state backing. What did Hayes get himself into? The thumb drive from Kosovo, Harrison said. The evidence Gray gave Kate before he died. It must contain something far more significant than just SOG operations. Before Harrison could respond, the operations center's security alarm activated. Red warning lights flashed as the main screen displayed multiple vehicles approaching the compound's perimeter. Perimeter breach, east entrance, announced the security officer. Military police vehicles, U.S. insignia. Shaw's making his move, Harrison muttered. How the hell did he get authorization for this? He doesn't need authorization if he's labeled us a national security threat, Reynolds responded, already moving toward the equipment locker. Initiate protocol blackout. Wipe all systems, physical extraction of critical hardware. Everyone out through the western emergency exit in 5 minutes. As the Guardian Shield team executed the rapid evacuation protocol, Reynolds retrieved a secure satellite phone and tossed it to Harrison. Get to the secondary operations site and coordinate from there. I'll rendezvous with the extraction team personally. Harrison caught the phone but made no move to leave. Michael, if you're captured, I won't be, Reynolds cut him off, checking his sidearm. But if something goes wrong, the evidence cache in Montana activates automatically. Everything we have on Hayes, Shaw, and SOG goes public. The two men exchanged a look that communicated more than words ever could. The understanding between veterans who had seen too much, sacrificed too much to turn back now. Godspeed, son, Harrison said finally. Reynolds nodded once, then disappeared through the emergency exit just as the sound of vehicles screeched to a halt outside. Hindu Kush Mountains, extraction point. Alpha, the Black Hawk helicopter settled onto the narrow plateau, its rotors kicking up swirls of dust in the pre-dawn light. Kate and Petty Officer Chen crouched behind the protective boulder formation, watching as Guardian Shield operators secured the landing zone. Clear to approach, announced the team leader through their tactical communications. Extraction in 90 seconds. Kate performed a final scan of the surrounding ridgelines through her thermal scope. The mountain terrain offered countless hiding places for snipers or observation teams. Movement, northwest ridge, approximately 1,700 meters, she reported. Single observer, likely spotter team. Too far to engage effectively, the team leader replied. We'll be airborne before they can relay our position. Move to the helicopter now. Kate and Chen advanced toward the waiting aircraft in tactical bounds. As they reached the helicopter, the door gunner provided covering fire, keeping any potential threats suppressed during the critical boarding phase. Package secure, the pilot confirmed. Lifting off in 3, 2. The crack of a high-powered rifle echoed across the valley. A round impacted the helicopter's fuselage, followed by the more serious thud of a bullet striking the engine housing. Taking fire, the pilot shouted as warning lights flashed. Engine 1 damaged. Cannot maintain lift with full passenger load. Kate calculated distances and trajectories. Shot came from the eastern ridge, approximately 2,000 meters. Hayes. No one else in the region could make that shot at this distance, in these conditions. We need to lighten the load or we're all grounded, the pilot announced, fighting the controls as the helicopter struggled to maintain altitude. The team leader made an instant decision. Medevac priority for Chen and Morgan. Remainder of team will establish defensive position and awaits secondary extraction. Negative, Kate countered, already moving toward the door. Chen goes. I stay. I'm the one Hayes wants. This isn't a debate, Kate cut him off, turning to Chen. Your team needs you. Lieutenant Carson needs to know what's happening. Go with them. Chen hesitated only briefly before giving a crisp nod of acknowledgement. Professional respect overcame personal objection. As Kate exited the helicopter, the pilot immediately gained altitude, the reduced weight allowing the damaged aircraft to climb beyond effective small arms range. The extraction team had already established defensive positions among the boulders. Kate joined the team leader, crouching behind a rock formation. Agent Morgan, we have a contingency extraction inbound, ETA 40 minutes, he informed her. But be advised, we're tracking multiple vehicles approaching from the south. Russian PMC signatures based on thermal profiles. Hayes is forcing us to ground, Kate concluded, using the Russians as blocking force while he maneuvers into position. She checked her rifle. He wants me alive. The evidence from Kosovo is secured with biometric locks. He needs me to access it. Then we don't let him take you alive, the team leader stated simply. Kate allowed herself a grim smile. Appreciate the sentiment, but there's another play here. She activated her tactical communication unit. This is Agent Morgan. Connect me to Reynolds. After a brief pause, Reynolds' voice came through. Kate, sit rep. Helicopter took fire. Likely Hayes. I'm groundside with the extraction team. Russian forces approaching from the south, approximately 3 kilometers in closing. Chen is airborne, en route to Bagram. Understood. I'm inbound on secondary extraction, 25 minutes out. Can you hold position? Kate scanned the surrounding terrain again, calculating distances, approaches, fields of fire. Affirmative, but we have another option. Hayes wants me. Let's give him what he wants. A pause. You're suggesting using yourself as bait. I'm suggesting we stop reacting to Hayes and force him to react to us. For 20 years, he's been one step ahead because he controls the engagement parameters. Time to change the game. Too risky, Reynolds responded immediately. We don't know how many assets he has in the area. Which is why we need to draw them out, Kate countered. I'll move to the high ground at these coordinates. Exposed position, clear sight lines in all directions. Perfect sniper's perch. Also a perfect target, Reynolds pointed out. Exactly. Hayes will recognize the position for what it is. An invitation to a sniper duel. His ego won't let him pass it up. One shot, one kill, at 2,000 plus meters. Just like old times. Another pause. Longer this time. When Reynolds spoke again, his voice carried the weight of 2 decades of partnership. You know he'll anticipate this. I'm counting on it, he replied. He'll approach from the northeast ridgeline. Best angle, best cover. His focus will be entirely on me, which means he won't be watching for your approach from the west. Pincer movement, classic envelopment. By positioning herself as visible bait, Kate would focus Hayes' attention entirely on the sniper duel, a contest between equals that his professional pride wouldn't allow him to delegate. 20 years for this moment, Reynolds said finally. You sure you're ready? Kate checked her rifle one final time. I've been ready since Kosovo. Just make sure you get here in time to see the final act. As she signed off, the team leader studied her with newfound respect. Agent Morgan, I've worked with some serious operators in my time, but that's either the bravest or the craziest plan I've heard. The line between the two gets blurry after a few decades in the field, she replied, slinging her rifle across her back. Take your team southwest. Establish overwatch on these coordinates. When the Russians approach, let them pass. Their objective is me, not you. We're not leaving you out there alone, he objected. You're not, Kate assured him. 20 years ago, Hayes tried to kill the 2 people who knew him best, Reynolds and me. He only half succeeded. Now he faces both of us. In the damaged Blackhawk racing toward Bagram, Sarah Chen gripped the overhead handhold as the pilot pushed the aircraft to its limits. Warning lights still flashed across the control panel, the damaged engine straining to maintain sufficient power for flight. "We'll make it to base," the crew chief assured her, "but it's going to be a rough ride." Chen turned her attention to the tactical radio the extraction team had provided her. Lieutenant Carson had established communication on an encrypted emergency frequency, confirming that Alpha 7 had gone dark and relocated to an abandoned shepherd's hut. "Chen, report status," Carson's voice came through the static. "Inbound to Bagram, on damaged medevac, sir." Agent Morgan remained groundside with the extraction team, Russian forces converging on their position. "Who the hell is Agent Morgan?" Chen hesitated, unsure how much to reveal over even an encrypted channel. "The operator who saved us in the valley, sir. Call sign Overwatch." "There's a lot you need to know, sir. Information I can't transmit securely." "Understood," Carson replied after a brief pause. "Rendezvous at Bagram, not advisable. Shaw has military police searching for us. We're being portrayed as deserters who abandoned a mission." This confirmed everything Kate had told her about the level of compromise within the command structure. "Alternate rendezvous point," Carson provided a location approximately 30 kilometers north of Bagram. "We'll approach from the east. Authenticate with challenge phrase Desert Thunder. Response phrase Midnight Falcon," Chen confirmed. "Sir, be advised. This goes much deeper than just our mission. Agent Morgan provided evidence that multiple SEAL teams have been deliberately placed in compromised positions over the past month. This is systematic." When Carson spoke again, his voice carried the controlled fury of a commander who had nearly lost his men to betrayal. "Get to the rendezvous point, Chen. We'll figure out our next move when you're secure." As the transmission ended, the helicopter banked sharply, beginning its descent toward Bagram. The pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Bagram Tower has ordered us to divert to secondary landing zone. Military police are stationed at the main helipad." "Shaw's people," Chen concluded. "They know I was with Morgan." "Guardian Shield has a contingency for this," the pilot replied. "Approaching from the northeast, we'll drop you at Maintenance Hangar 7, civilian contractor vehicle waiting to extract you to safe location. From there, you're on your own to the rendezvous with your team." Chen checked her sidearm and the limited supplies in her tactical vest. Going from elite SEAL operator to effective fugitive in the space of 24 hours was not how she had expected this deployment to unfold. "Coming in hot," the pilot announced as the helicopter descended rapidly toward a dimly lit section of the massive airbase. 30 seconds to touchdown. Be ready to move immediately." Chen positioned herself by the door, muscles tense for rapid deployment. Whatever came next, her priority was clear. Reach Carson and the rest of Alpha 7, then find a way to expose the conspiracy that had nearly killed them all. The exposed ridge line offered a commanding view of the valley below. Kate settled into position behind her rifle, establishing a stable shooting platform despite the precarious terrain. The first rays of dawn illuminated the mountain peaks to the east, casting long shadows across the landscape. Perfect lighting conditions for a sniper. The target illuminated while the shooter remained in shadow. Through her scope, Kate could see the Russian vehicles establishing a perimeter approximately 2 kilometers south of her position. Professional deployment, tactical spacing, crew-served weapons being positioned at key points. Not a capture team, but a blocking force, preventing any escape to the south while Hayes maneuvered into position from the northeast. She allowed herself a grim smile. 20 years as Spectre 1 had taught Hayes her operational patterns, her tactical preferences, the way she approached each engagement. But those same years had taught her about him as well. His arrogance, his need for professional validation, his unwavering belief that he was the superior operator. That arrogance would be his downfall. Kate adjusted her scope, focusing on the northeast ridgeline where Hayes would most likely establish his shooting position. The distance would be approximately 2,300 meters, beyond the effective range of most sniper systems, but well within the capabilities of the specialized weapons they both carried. Her radio crackled to life. "Agent Morgan, Guardian Shield team is in position. Russian forces holding at 2 kilometers south. No movement detected on the northeast ridge yet. Maintain position and stand by," she responded. "When Hayes makes his move, it will happen quickly." Kate regulated her breathing, entering the focused state that had allowed her to make impossible shots throughout her career. Complete awareness of the environment, wind speed and direction, temperature, barometric pressure, Even the rotation of the Earth at this extreme distance, combined with a detachment from distracting thoughts or emotions. The first indication came not from a visible movement, but from an almost imperceptible disturbance in the air, the distinctive signature of a bullet passing within inches of her position. There had been no sound, the shooter too far away for the report to reach her before the projectile. Hayes had made his first move. Kate remained motionless, analyzing the shot trajectory. Northeast ridge as expected, but further east than she had anticipated. The bullet's path suggested a firing position partially concealed by a rock formation. Hayes must be positioned. No thermal signature visible. He would be using a specialized suit to mask his body heat. No scope reflection. He was too experienced for such a basic error. Kate switched to the enhanced thermal system Morrison had designed specifically for Guardian Shield operations. The advanced sensor could detect minute temperature differentials, including the residual heat signature from a rifle barrel after firing. There, a faint glow against the cold mountain background, barely distinguishable from the surrounding rocks. The barrel cooling after the shot. Kate calculated the exact position, adjusting for wind and ballistic drop at 2,350 meters. She controlled her breathing, feeling her heart rate slow. 5 beats, inhale halfway. Hold. The M2010 spoke once. Through her scope, Kate watched as her round impacted the rock formation precisely where she had aimed, not at Hayes himself, but at the position adjacent to where his rifle barrel had revealed his location. Fragments of stone exploded outward, forcing any shooter to abandon the compromised position. The radio came to life again. Movement detected, northeast ridge. Single operator repositioning approximately 50 meters west of previous location. Confirmed, Kate responded, already adjusting her aim to the new sector. By targeting Hayes's position rather than attempting a direct shot on a target she couldn't clearly see, Kate had forced him to move, disrupting his shooting platform, requiring him to reestablish his sight picture, rushing his calculations. Small advantages that could prove decisive at this level of operation. Her radio crackled again, this time with Reynolds' voice. Guardian Shield extraction team 10 minutes out. Russian forces still holding position. No sign of reinforcements. Hayes is alone, Kate confirmed. This is between him and me. Just as he wanted it. The second shot came without warning. Closer this time. The bullet passing through the fabric of her jacket sleeve without striking flesh. A message, not a miss. Hayes was demonstrating his precision, his control. Kate maintained her position, using the enhanced thermal system to scan the new location. Then she saw it, not a thermal signature, but a brief reflection of morning sunlight on metal. Hayes was baiting her, trying to draw her shot to a false position. Kate didn't take the bait. Instead, she scanned the area 20 meters to the left of the reflection, where an experienced operator would actually establish a position. The enhanced thermal picked up the faint signature of body heat partially masked by specialized gear. She adjusted her aim, calculating for a target partially concealed behind a rock formation. The variables were complex. Wind shifting direction at different elevations, temperature differential between shadowed and sunlit areas, the minute gravitational effect of the mountain mass itself on the bullet's trajectory. The M2010 spoke again. This time there was a reaction, a sudden movement behind the rocks, the thermal signature shifting rapidly. Not the stillness of a lethal hit, but the motion of someone taking cover after a near miss. "I see you, Richard," Kate whispered. Her radio activated. 5 minutes to extraction team arrival. Russian forces showing signs of preparation for advance. Hayes would be aware of the extraction team's approach. His window of opportunity was closing. Kate knew he would take a greater risk now, attempt a finishing shot rather than continue the methodical duel. She shifted slightly, creating the impression of adjusting her shooting platform, presenting a target, an opportunity, a calculated risk, banking on Hayes's growing desperation and the degradation of his patience. The third shot came exactly as she had predicted, closer than the others, actually grazing her cheek as it passed. A millimeter difference would have been fatal, but in taking the shot, Hayes had fully revealed his position, the thermal signature of the rifle barrel now clearly visible. Kate made her final calculations, adjusting for a target that would likely be moving immediately after taking his shot. Lead the target slightly, anticipate his direction of movement based on the terrain features visible through the scope. One shot, one kill. The mantra of snipers throughout history. The M2010 fired its third round. Through her scope, Kate watched as the bullet found its mark, not center mass as would be standard protocol, but precisely through Hayes's right shoulder, the impact spinning him from behind his cover into partial view. A disabling shot, not immediately fatal. 20 years ago, Hayes had left Reynolds with a traumatic brain injury that should have ended his career. Now Kate had returned the favor with a wound that would end Hayes's operational effectiveness without killing him. Justice, not vengeance. Target down, she reported through the radio. Wounded, not eliminated. Reynolds' voice came back, tight with tension. Status of the target? Alive, disabled, he won't be going anywhere. Russian forces moving northward, came the update from the Guardian Shield team, approaching your position rapidly. Kate began breaking down her rifle, securing it in the specialized carrying case. Extraction team ETA, 3 minutes to your position. We'll reach Hayes's location approximately 2 minutes after that. Understood. Kate stood, surveying the valley below where Russian vehicles were now advancing rapidly toward her position. The blocking force had transformed into an assault force, racing to reach their asset before the American extraction team could capture him. Kate began her descent from the ridgeline, moving toward the designated extraction point. The wound in her shoulder throbbed with each movement, a reminder of her own vulnerability despite the successful shot. The distinctive sound of helicopter rotors echoed through the valley as the Guardian Shield extraction team appeared over the western ridge. 2 modified Blackhawks, their profiles streamlined for enhanced speed and reduced acoustic signature. Reynolds would be on the lead aircraft, completing the circle that had begun 20 years ago in Kosovo. As Kate reached the extraction point, she turned for one final look at the northeast ridge where Hayes lay wounded. Through her tactical binoculars, she could see him struggling to move toward cover, his right arm hanging useless at his side. Their eyes met across the distance. Hunter and hunted, betrayer and betrayed, 2 ghosts from a program that officially never existed. The first Black Hawk settled onto the rocky ground beside her, its side door sliding open to reveal Reynolds in full tactical gear, weapon ready. No words were necessary as Kate boarded the aircraft. The decades of partnership, of shared mission and purpose, made verbal communications superfluous. Russian vehicles 300 meters south and closing fast, the pilot announced. Second team is moving to Hayes's position now. Reynolds studied the tactical display showing the converging forces. Can they reach him before the Russians? Negative, the pilot responded. Russian QRF will beat them by approximately 90 seconds. The implication was clear. Hayes would be extracted by his Russian backers before the Guardian Shield team could capture him. After 20 years, he would slip through their fingers once again. Reynolds met Kate's gaze, a silent question passing between them. They could order the second helicopter to engage the Russian vehicles, potentially delaying them long enough for the capture team to reach Hayes. But that would mean open engagement between American contractors and Russian forces. An international incident with unpredictable consequences. Stand down the capture team, Kate said finally. Let the Russians have him. Reynolds raised an eyebrow, surprised by her decision after 20 years of relentless pursuit. His operational career is over with that shoulder wound, Kate explained, and we have what we really need. She patted the secure pocket of her tactical vest, where Gray's thumb drive had resided for 20 years. The evidence against Siam, against Shaw, against everyone involved in the conspiracy, that's what matters now. Reynolds nodded slowly, understanding her reasoning. Extraction team, abort capture mission, he ordered through the tactical radio. Return to base immediately. Russian forces have operational control of the area. As their helicopter banked sharply away from the approaching Russian vehicles, Kate watched through the side window as the second Black Hawk broke off its approach to Hayes's position, climbing rapidly to avoid potential engagement. On the ground below, Russian Special Forces operators were already reaching the wounded sniper, securing him for extraction. 20 years, Reynolds said quietly, and he still walks away. Not this time, Kate replied, her voice carrying the certainty of someone who had calculated all the variables. He's alive, but he's finished, and we have everything we need to bring down the entire operation. Reynolds studied her face, noting the calm satisfaction in her expression. You never intended to capture him, did you? The shot placement was deliberate, disabling but not fatal. We're not executioners, Kate replied, echoing Gray's words from Kosovo 2 decades earlier. We never were. That's what separated us from Hayes from the beginning. He lost sight of the line between operator and assassin. We never did. As the mountains of Afghanistan receded behind them, Kate felt a weight lifting, not completely gone, but lessened. 20 years of hunting the ghost from Kosovo had defined her existence, shaped every operation, every decision. Now that chapter was closing, but the final pages remained to be written. The evidence they carried would expose a conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of military command. Generals, intelligence directors, political appointees who had supported SOG's shadow operations for decades. The aftermath would be messy, controversial, potentially devastating to public trust in the institutions they had once served. But the truth had to be told. For Gray, who had died trying to expose the betrayal, for the countless operators who had been sacrificed as pawns in games played at levels far above their pay grade, for the ideal of service and sacrifice that had drawn them all to the special operations community in the first place. What now? Reynolds asked as the Black Hawk accelerated toward the extraction point where Harrison awaited with secure transport. Kate looked at her longtime partner, the man who had defied medical prognosis to recover from a traumatic brain injury and return to operational status against all odds. The man who had stood beside her through 2 decades of shadow operations, hunting the ghosts of Spectre. Now we finish what Gray started, she replied. We bring the whole thing into the light. Fort Bragg, North Carolina, 6 months later. The training range echoed with the sharp reports of rifle fire as a new generation of special operations candidates honed their marksmanship skills. Colonel William Harrison, recently reinstated to active duty status after the Shaw investigation, stood beside the range master, observing the shooters with the critical eye of someone who had spent decades evaluating operator potential. Third position, third from the left, Harrison noted quietly. Natural talent, breathing control is exceptional. The range master nodded agreement. Staff Sergeant Chen, transferred from Naval Special Warfare last month, already breaking records on the long-range course. Harrison allowed himself a small smile. Sarah Chen had made her choice after the Afghanistan operation, transferring from the SEALs to Army Special Forces, where she could help build the next generation of specialized operators. Lieutenant Carson had followed a different path, accepting a position with Guardian Shield Security Consultants after his honorable discharge from the Navy. The investigation had cleared Alpha 7 of all charges, but the shadow of having gone dark during operations had effectively ended their conventional military careers. The investigation is finally winding down, Harrison remarked as they walked along the firing line, observing the trainees. 17 senior officers relieved of command, 38 indictments in civilian courts. Congressional hearings scheduled to begin next month. And Shaw, the rangemaster asked, cooperating with investigators in exchange for consideration at sentencing. His testimony has implicated officials even higher up the chain than we initially suspected. The political fallout had been seismic, a shadow organization operating within the military structure for decades, conducting unauthorized operations, eliminating targets without proper authorization, manipulating intelligence to justify actions that would never have received official sanction. The public revelations had triggered the most significant reforms of military oversight since the Church Committee hearings of the 1970s. Harrison's secure phone vibrated with an incoming message. The display showed only a mountain landscape, the prearranged signal for communications from Guardian Shield. "Excuse me," he said to the rangemaster, stepping away to take the call. "Harrison," he answered once he had moved a sufficient distance from potential listeners. "It's Reynolds. Thought you'd want to know. Hayes was spotted in Belgrade yesterday. Russian diplomatic protection, moving with a full security detail. Right arm still immobilized." Harrison processed this information. After the Afghanistan operation, Hayes had disappeared into Russian territory, presumably debriefed extensively about his 20 years of operations against American interests. The fact that he was now appearing publicly, under official protection, suggested a new phase in whatever game was being played. "Is Kate aware?" "She's the one who spotted him," Reynolds replied. She was in Belgrade tracking some financial transactions linked to the remnants of SOG. Says Hayes looked directly at her across the hotel lobby, made sure she saw him. A message, Harrison concluded. That's how we read it. He's letting us know he's still in play, still connected, still dangerous despite the physical limitations. Harrison considered the implications. The SOG network had been largely dismantled through the evidence provided by Guardian Shield, but international connections remained. Russian intelligence services, private military companies, financial institutions that had facilitated their operations for decades. Hayes might be physically compromised, but his knowledge, his connections, remained valuable. What's your next move? Harrison asked. Kate wants to pursue, Reynolds said. Follow the trail, see where it leads. I'm more focused on the bigger picture, the structural vulnerabilities that allowed SOG to operate for so long without detection, preventing the next Hayes rather than chasing the original. And what does Kate say to that approach? Reynolds' chuckle carried through the secure connection. She says, why not do both? Typical Kate, never met a challenge she didn't want to take head on. Harrison found himself smiling despite the seriousness of the situation. In the 6 months since Afghanistan, Guardian Shield had transformed from a small private security operation into something more complex. Part security contractor, part intelligence organization, part watchdog against exactly the kind of shadow operations that had nearly destroyed them all. With the evidence from Kosovo finally public, they no longer needed to operate exclusively in the shadows. Keep me informed, Harrison said. Whatever resources you need, whatever doors need opening, let me know. Will do. Oh, and Bill, Kate said to tell you that the ghost isn't gone, just wounded, and wounded ghosts are often the most dangerous kind. After the call ended, Harrison returned to the firing line, watching as Chen adjusted the scope on her rifle with the precise movements of someone born to the craft. The young sergeant reminded him of Kate 25 years earlier. The same focused intensity, the same natural gift for precision shooting that went beyond technical skill into the realm of pure instinct. The cycle continued. New operators trained to face new threats, carrying forward the lessons learned through decades of both triumph and tragedy. The shadows never fully disappeared. They merely shifted, adapted, found new corners in which to gather. And so the Guardians evolved as well, learning from each generation, building on both successes and failures. And as Chen fired her final round, striking the target center mass at 1,000 meters despite challenging crosswinds, Harrison made a mental note to speak with her about potential specialized training opportunities. Guardian Shield was always looking for exceptional talent, particularly operators who had already demonstrated the moral courage to stand against corruption within the system they had sworn to serve. Some battles ended, others merely entered new phases. The ghost of Project Spectre lingered, a reminder of both what had been lost and what remained worth fighting for. Whatever came next, whatever form the shadows took in the years ahead, there would be Guardians ready to meet them. Not because of official sanction or authorization, but because they had made a choice. The same choice Kate Morgan and Michael Reynolds had made 20 years earlier in the mountains of Kosovo. To stand against the darkness, no matter the personal cost. To defend those who would never know their names or the sacrifices made on their behalf. To be the guardians in the shadows. Montana, Guardian Shield headquarters. Present day. The sun was setting behind the Rocky Mountains, casting long shadows across the valley where the Guardian Shield compound stood. From the observation deck of the main building, Kate Morgan watched the fading light with a glass of bourbon in her hand, the amber liquid catching the last golden rays of daylight. 20 years of hunting ghosts had left their mark, silver threading through her dark hair, lines etched around her eyes, the permanent reminders of wounds sustained across countless operations. But her eyes remained sharp, missing nothing, cataloging everything with the automatic vigilance that had kept her alive through decades in the field. The door behind her opened as Reynolds joined her on the deck, his own glass in hand. No words were necessary as he took position beside her, both of them watching the mountains in comfortable silence. After 20 years of partnership, they communicated as much through presence as through speech. Harrison called, Reynolds said finally. The Senate Intelligence Committee has officially requested our testimony next month. Closed session, highest security clearance. Kate nodded, unsurprised. The investigation into SOG and its political connections had expanded beyond military circles, reaching into intelligence agencies, State Department operations, even certain congressional oversight committees. The full extent of the shadow network was still being mapped, each revelation leading to new questions, new avenues of inquiry. They're particularly interested in the Russian connection, Reynolds continued. Hayes's current protection status in Belgrade suggests state-level involvement going back further than we initially suspected. It was never just about Hayes, Kate replied, taking a sip of her bourbon. He was a symptom, not the disease. A weapon pointed in a specific direction by people with larger agendas. Reynolds studied her profile in the fading light. You don't regret letting him live? No. Her answer came without hesitation. Killing him would have ended one man's story. Capturing the evidence, exposing the network, that changes the system itself. Gray would have approved of that approach. The mention of their fallen teammate brought a moment of shared silence. After all these years, the losses still resonated. Gray's steadfast moral compass, Miller's linguistic brilliance, and quiet humor. The operators who had fallen in operations that would never appear in official records or receive public recognition. Chen accepted our offer, Reynolds noted, changing the subject to more immediate concerns. She starts next month after her discharge from the Army. Kate smiled slightly. I told you she would. She's got the same look in her eyes that we had after Kosovo, the need to operate beyond conventional boundaries, to address threats that traditional military structures aren't designed to confront. Speaking of unconventional threats, Reynolds reached into his pocket, retrieving a small data tablet. Morrison's analysis of Hayes's Belgrade security detail identified something interesting. Two of the Russians providing his protection were former GRU operators who worked extensively in the Balkans during the late 90s. They would have been active in Kosovo around the time of Operation Silent Thunder. Kate absorbed this new information, connecting dots across 2 decades of operations. You think Russian intelligence was involved with SOG from the beginning? That Hayes's betrayal in Kosovo wasn't a spontaneous decision, but a planned extraction? The evidence suggests something more complex than a disgruntled operator selling out his team, Reynolds confirmed. Hayes may have been a Russian asset even before joining Project Spectre, a deep cover operative placed specifically to gain access to our most sensitive operations. The implications were staggering, not just a betrayal by a teammate, but a deliberate infiltration orchestrated at the highest levels of foreign intelligence. It recontextualized everything they thought they had known about the events in Kosovo and the 20 years that followed. If that's true, Kate said slowly, then our hunt for Hayes was always part of their calculation. They wanted us focused on him, not on the larger network. Classic misdirection, Reynolds agreed, and we played our part exactly as scripted, right up until Afghanistan, when we finally had the leverage and resources to expose the entire operation. Kate turned from the mountain view to face her longtime partner, the man who had overcome a traumatic brain injury to return to operational status against all medical prognosis, who had built Guardian Shield from nothing into an organization capable of challenging shadow networks that had operated with impunity for decades. So what's the next move, she asked, though she already knew the answer. Reynolds' scarred face revealed the faint smile that few people ever saw, the expression of a predator who had spotted previously hidden prey. We followed the new trail. We mapped the connections between SOG, Russian intelligence, and whoever in our government facilitated their operations for all these years. We finished what we started in Kosovo. Kate raised her glass slightly. To Gray, she said quietly. To Gray, Reynolds echoed, and to ghosts who don't stay buried. As darkness settled over the mountains, they returned inside to the operations center, where Morrison was already analyzing the Belgrade intelligence, building the network diagram that would guide their next moves. 20 years hunting one ghost had led them to a larger truth, a more complex conspiracy that crossed international boundaries and penetrated the highest levels of multiple governments. The hunt wasn't over. It had merely entered a new phase. And this time, they weren't operating alone in the shadows. This time, they had built something that could withstand the light of day, an organization dedicated to the principles that Project Spectre had originally embodied before corruption and betrayal had twisted its purpose. Whatever came next, whatever new shadows emerged in the years ahead, the Guardians would be ready. Not because of official sanction or authorization, but because they had made a choice. The same choice Kate Morgan and Michael Reynolds had made 20 years earlier. To stand against the darkness, no matter the personal cost. To bring the ghosts into the light where they could no longer hide. To be the guardians not just of the shadows, but of the truth itself.